Well, hello everyone. I wanted to put together a little lecture video here to discuss the concept of attachment and some of the different theories of attachment. We're not going to go through all of the theories in here. We're just going to go through a small handful. And I probably should refer to this not only as theories of attachment, but also phenomena related to attachment. So let's go ahead and get started. When I ask people what is attachment, the easiest way to define attachment is this. An attachment is an emotional connection, it's an emotional bond. And typically, when we think of attachment, we usually think of an infant and we think of a caregiver. Okay. There are friendships, those are forms of attachments. Dating, that's forms of attachment as well. In adulthood, we could talk about attachments, but for now, we're going to start off with infancy. And I will say this about an emotional bond between an infant and a caregiver. The definition of a caregiver can easily be mom, it can be dad, and a caregiver can even be a you know an aunt, an uncle, even unfortunately a daycare worker. Uh, Basically, it's whoever is with a child who's taking care of a child. That's the one that we refer to as a caregiver, and there can be more than one. All right. Most attachment is simply based on what we call quantity time. And this can get a little controversial in that there's an old term out there called quality time. Quality time was basically developed on the premise that, hey, people are working at their jobs. And so, because of that, these working men and these working women, they can't spend as much time with their kids as they could otherwise. So, at least make the best of the time that you've got. The truth of the matter is that what works a lot better is not just quality time, but quantity time. And by quantity time, I mean, as much time as you possibly can. And quality time is how well you spend that. But the more time, the better. All right. So while some people like to talk about the idea that, well, granted, you can only spend a very short amount of time, just make it good. Honestly, psychology would tell you very humbly that's not enough. You need to spend as much time as you can to develop a healthy attachment and so that children begin to learn all the many things that they need to learn. All right. We then start to talk about what are called phenomenons of attachment. As I typically define a phenomenon, what we're referring to is this: any kind of attachment that forms, excuse me, let me start over. When it comes to phenomenons, we're talking about a known behavior that we may not completely understand. Say that again. A phenomenon, a lot of times, is a known behavior that we don't completely understand. For example, in the name of phenomenons of attachment, we actually believe that it is possible to form an attachment between a mother and her baby, okay, before the baby is born. For the most part, this premise was originally suggested by a Dr. John Bowlby. And really, Dr. Bowlby noted that a lot of times newborns, basically minutes old, that's how old they are, they've just been born. It doesn't matter if a doctor or nurse or even the father holds the baby. A lot of times it's hard to calm them down. A baby cries. It doesn't matter if the baby is, it doesn't matter if the nurse or the doctor is male or female. It's surprising to note that sometimes mom can have a calming effect as she lays her newborn daughter or son across her chest that no one in the room can cause. And what Dr. Bowlby and others believe is that this is a form of attachment that actually formed before birth. Now, what makes us think that this attachment is there? The key is the heartbeat of the mother. We theorize that the heartbeat of the mother that forms before birth, because you can hear that heartbeat in the womb. Um, Hearts move at different rates. Some of you have fast hearts, some of you have slow hearts. And heart and sounds travel better through fluid than they do air. So it's very possible that as a baby lays across the chest of the mom, hears a sound that they can relate to and therefore calms down for mom when they won't calm down for anyone else. Another thing that Dr. Bowlby believed is that infants' attachments evolve over time. Okay? They evolve over time. He calls this his ethological theory of attachment. All right? And really, to understand it, it's a four-stage theory of how attachments tend to develop. First of all, Dr. Bowlby believed that attachment in infants, and I just sort of said this, goes through a very indiscriminate stage to a very designed stage. Let me explain. According to Dr. John Bowlby, the first stage of attachment is what is referred to as orientation without discrimination. Dr. Bowlby noted that a lot of newborn infants, from birth to about approximately 12 weeks of age, can be calmed and made happy by almost anyone that will take care of them. All right. If mom's not around and someone holds them and they feel safe and they feel secure, they're warm, we call this orientation without discrimination. They don't discriminate. If you take care of me, then I'm fine. If I'm handed off to someone else and they hold me and are safe, and I'm only 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old, I'm fine with that too. Okay, somewhere starting around the second month, all right, 8 weeks, and so there's a little overlap here, sometimes later, and running up to about 6 months, okay, infants go through what Dr. Bowlby refers to as orientation with discrimination. And what that simply means is that during this time, infants have their preferences. By this point, they have certain people that they would rather be held by than other people. You might hand your 3 month old or 4 month old over to a relative or to a friend, and after a couple of moments, they may turn around and want mom or they want dad. They're showing a preference, and so. In the strictest sense, what we call that is discrimination. They can discriminate, they can tell the difference. Orientation with discrimination. Starting around 6 months and running to about 36 months, 3 years of age, all right, we refer to a lot of their behavior, because now we're talking toddlers, as what is called a safe-based attachment. And simply put, during this time, infants will turn around, they're walking, first they're crawling, then they're walking, and they will check things out. They will look around the room, they will play, they will do things. But a lot of times they look back just to make sure that mom is there or dad is there, or someone who's supposed to be there is present, and so on. And if you get up and leave, they can get very upset about it. So this is the third of four levels of attachment. Now we're actually willing to get out and investigate the world around us, but we want to look back and make sure once in a while that person is there if we need them. And then starting around age 3 and going up from there, Dr. Bowlby refers to things as what he called goal-corrected attachment. By goal-corrected attachment, children are learning what they can and cannot do. They may set a goal and you may allow them to do certain things. You may allow them not to do other things. They can go check things out, but they can't go down the stairs. They can look out the back door, but they can't try to open the door. Depending upon how you set it up. They basically learn those behaviors that they can accomplish and find out the ones that they cannot. So these are sort of the four theories of attachment, or four stages of attachment within Bowlby's theory. All right, starting with anybody can hold me, and then progressing into I want certain people to hold me, and then progressing into I will actually begin to travel forth as long as you're present. And then after a while, I will do a lot of searching and seeking and playing and doing things as long as I know what I can and cannot do. Another couple of phenomenons of attachment include what is called separation anxiety. I jokingly tell people, if you've ever had an infant son or daughter who's maybe, say, 10 months old or 9 months old, maybe a little younger, a little older, and they're playing in their crib. And as long as you're standing there watching them play in their crib or look at their mobile, they're happy as can be. So what do? You decide it's time to go get some laundry started, or to do the dishes, or maybe go watch some television or work on homework. And you leave the bedroom, you take about 5 steps down the hallway, and what happens? The baby starts to cry. So you come walking back real quick to calm them down and let them know that you're there and everything's fine. And they do calm down. And sure enough, you leave the room a second time, you get only 3 steps down the hallway. The number of steps is not the issue. And they turn around and get upset again. About the third or fourth time you find yourself coming back to the room, you start to realize that your goals of doing all these great many things may not happen, because when you leave, they get terribly upset. This is what we call separation anxiety. Children go through this in different levels and different degrees. Some suffer from it a lot, some not so much. But what is one of the really big determinants of separation anxiety is a Piagetian element referred to as object permanence. If you don't remember that from before, look it up. It's part of his sensory motor stage of cognitive development. And object permanence basically is a phenomenon whereby children know things exist even though they don't see them right in front of them. It is interesting to note that separation anxiety tends to diminish as object permanence becomes more secure. And then there is what we refer to as stranger anxiety. Stranger anxiety is sort of fascinating because it typically occurs around 6 months of age, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, and sometimes not at all. But what you might find is that if you're out and about with your child at age 4 months, they're 4 months old, and along comes an unfamiliar person, maybe a neighbor or something like that. Your child may look at you and may look at this unfamiliar face, and as long as you're calm, they're calm. At age 5 months, along comes an unfamiliar person. They look at the stranger, they look at you, and as long as you're calm, they're calm. But at 6 months of age, approximately, even though you're calm, even though all is good, they sometimes get upset. Stranger anxiety doesn't happen to all children, all right? And we theorize that children begin to realize the extent of the world around them and what could be potential danger. And even though you stay calm, sometimes, not always, they turn around and have a difficult time with the presence of a stranger. What's interesting about stranger anxiety is that it can disappear as fast as it shows up. And that has been known to happen a lot, all right? These are just some of the phenomenon worth noting here. There are other theories, and I will talk about them in other videos, okay? Hope that helps. Take care.